together because it is Mr. Edmund Truell.
Thank you, sir. I think I'm mic'd up.
Oh, you're mic'd up.
It's wireless. It's amazing. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much indeed for listening. I'm a strange mixture of financial services entrepreneur and boring old fart. And so whilst you guys may be the brains, in many ways I'm the money. So whether you like it or not, you're going to have to listen to me if you want to get invested. What's the problem? It's like I'm a public sector employee. I mean, this is so exciting. I've never been a public sector employee before, but about 3 or 4 months ago, Boris asked me to take over the London Pension Fund Authority, one of those wonderful kind of quango things, but it actually runs a lot of money. And our aim is, in part, to use that money to foster infrastructure here in London, housing in London, and absolutely to foster venture capital and growth capital. And so that's one of my missions and ambitions at the London Pension Fund Authority. Separately, I'm also chairman of one of those ECFs that Rowan just mentioned, those enterprise capital funds. This is probably the only audience where I can be proud of being disruptive. You know, my mother's still very, very worried about that title, having had to rescue me from school. But the great advantage of being chairman of a private equity fund or venture capital fund is that we can try and do venture capital properly. And I'm going to just spend a few minutes talking about what, as investors, we want to invest in, what we don't want to invest in, and some of the lessons that I've learned over far too long of investing in venture capital, which I think I started in 1984. I'm a financial services entrepreneur as well. Did Britain's largest ever startup. We raised about £913 million as a startup. And for people here in this fintech incubator, my one piece of advice is get the financial services regulators sorted, please. Forget the nice words about how they'd like to encourage entrepreneurship, like they want to encourage people to go into financial services. They absolutely do not. I spent £17 million on the application last time round. I've got a new bank that's just about to go live, completely web-enabled, and they're trying very, very hard to make that difficult as well. So it's not a function of whether we make money or not. It's just get out of the way, please, guys. Investing in venture capital is a dog of a game. I mean, basically, as I will show you in a moment, the average return is extremely poor. If you get your money back as an investor in venture capital, you are very lucky. Forget the tax breaks. There's no point in having capital gains tax breaks if there isn't any capital gain. So it's a bit of a bad day. And ever since the enormous flood of money into the tech business in 2000, 2001, with that internet bubble, that internet boom, basically European VCs have made no money. So why am I mad enough to invest into venture capital? I have about half of my own portfolio in VC, and even as a pension fund, boring old fart, we have a significant amount of money, about £180 million into clean tech, which must make us one of the biggest clean tech VCs in the country. Why? Is because you have this optionality. You have this possibility that you could just make a spectacular return. I wish I knew before I made the investment which ones were going to be massively successful. You don't. But on the other hand, sometimes you do get lucky. And it's strange. The more you invest, the more often you get lucky. It's a bit like sort of one of those golfers who gets lucky the more he practices. And I have been fortunate enough, for example, to be invested in a fund of venture capital funds where 20% of the entire fund was returned by Facebook investment. Or in a fund of funds where 60% of the entire fund was returned by a Russian startup called EPAM. It's fantastic. And also personally, as a venture capitalist investing my own funds, we've managed to do things like Getty Images. We incubated Getty Images in our own little office. And that was a real privilege. And it's taught me a lot of lessons as to what to do right, as well as what to do wrong. And I think all too often people try and learn from what they've done wrong. Sometimes you want to learn from what you've done right as well. And try and think of what's the sort of business plan and business model that actually succeeds, like Getty Images, now a plus or minus $4 billion sized company from an absolute startup back in our office in 1995. You need an experienced venture capitalist. All too often, and if I want to be critical about those kind of regional enterprise funds, it's a couple of likely lads who haven't really made it very well in corporate finance who think, oh, I could be a venture capitalist. It doesn't actually work that way. That's called learning on someone else's nickel. You need to have a lot of money. Because what happens when you guys actually succeed? When that couple of £1 million of startup capital actually starts to work. This technology works. Oh my God, we've just had a big order. How are we going to finance it? Oh my goodness me, the technology works. How are we going to get our nice product to market? We need 30, 40, 50 people in the sales department. You need a lot of money to follow on to make the most of success. It's probably better to back someone that's actually tried to do it before. I know I'm being an old fart here, but if you have learned it, you don't have to succeed, but I do want you to have tried it before, to be a serial entrepreneur in that respect. But what am I looking for most? I'm looking for that ambition to be a world leader. The greatest problem in the UK that I can see, why do we not have as many companies that really make it to being $20 billion as the US? Why? Is because we have this strange fascination with vicarages and fast cars. All too often, I've backed people who've done a fantastic job, really good, super companies, great technologies, great business models. They've grown it, succeeded, profits have tripled. It's all very good news. And then they say, I want to sell out. And you go, why? Ooh, I'm worth £3 million now. I'm really excited by that. I could buy a vicarage and a fast car. And you think, oh, for God's sake. Would you like to make £300 million? Oh, no, I might lose my £3 million. So there's this pathetic attitude to risk and reward, which really, really disappoints me as an investor. I get very cross about it. I'm only too pleased to buy out those guys and say, well, actually, you've got a great company. Thank you very much. I'll pay less than it's worth and employ someone that actually wants to grow it. So that is an exciting moment for someone like myself with my little sharp teeth on. But it's a very disappointing moment for UK PLC. So get a venture capitalist. Why? They've got networks. They do have money, etc. They make life a lot easier rather than you trailing around, what was it, friends and fools? There are only a few good ones. If you can get a really good VC to back you, that actually counts a lot with everybody else. I'd like in due course Disruptive to be one of those successful venture capitalists. I set it up with my brother and myself. We're actually owned by a charity, so it's a bit different. And our objective is actually to prove that you can make money out of venture capital in the UK. Most of the funds are subscale. I cannot believe, sorry, Rowan, he's not here, but just to spare the blushes, but I met one fund being given 100 million or something by the European Union. I said, how many investments are you going to make? He said, 800 of a £100 million fund. You might as well just burn the money. Forget it, guys. Complete waste of time. And what happens as a result of that is that these guys just charge fees and government money and private money just gets wasted. Look at these numbers here. You've got approximately 10% a year going on management fees. We're in a low return world. So basically your return as an investor in a venture capital fund is being eaten up by incompetent management. And guess what? That's the result. It's not a happy scene. I know the chairs are in the way, and it's very, very lucky because you can't see the really bad stuff at the bottom. But essentially, since 2000, since about 99 actually, venture capital funds on average, and I'm indebted to the BVCA for enormous help they've given me in putting some of these facts and figures together. And they're brilliant like that in terms of helping us actually understand what's going on in venture capital. But for the last, goodness knows, 14 years, the average venture capital fund in Europe has made no money for its investors. That is, of course, net after fees. And as a result of that industrial failure, those people who are in it who are not very good, and that applies to most of them, are quite rightly worried they will not raise another venture capital fund. So guess what? They hang on to such funds as they've got. They dribble them out, £500,000 at a time. They have multiple funding rounds. When you get to round 7, you know you're really not doing very well. And it's all very slow. And the issue that I have most issue with here in the UK and Europe is that actually there's this cycle, this vicious cycle of kind of slow and low, little amounts of money dribbling in, an awful lot of effort to put that money in, and it means that the company actually spends most of its time talking to lawyers and accountants and venture capitalists rather than actually doing the job it's meant to do. Now, on the other hand, I did say there's optionality of outperformance, so let's learn from that. And actually, sometimes when you get this right, it's really quite lucrative. Where's the smart money going? There are a few firms that are aggregating money. When you go for money, if you're going out there as an entrepreneur, ask your venture capitalist how long it took him to raise his last fund. Was his fund an invitation-only fund? If the answer is yes, then that's absolutely a venture capitalist you want to be with. Be arrogant about your proposition. You're bloody good. Your business model's fantastic. And sometimes just a little bit of arrogance spilling over into self-confidence can actually work in terms of raising money. And what should we be doing? We should be backing a serial founder. Basically, the probability of our success as an investor is backing a serial founder. And you can see the numbers are really very, very startling. And as I said before, there's actually no correlation between success in that previous venture or failure in that previous venture and subsequent success. So the thing is, you've practiced. And then the real key, this is where we're really changing things in disruptive, is that we back the winners. Put real money behind the winners. Put 10 million, 20 million, 30 million. Just put 40 million pounds, it's closing today, 40 million pounds of growth capital into a business that I backed as an angel back in 2005. It's in media. It just won the Media Innovators Award. And that's really serious money to take that business global. It's going to be on every platform, Apple, Google, the whole 9 yards. And it's going to be probably the most important content provider in digital if we have our way with it. But we're putting really serious money to work here. It's not just putting £500,000 in and hoping it's going to be okay. And that's a lesson you learn from the most successful US venture capitalists as well. My brother and I founded Disruptive, and my brother's also CIO of Wellcome Trust. They've got £2.2 billion in venture capital. And they've got a 68% per annum compound return on that venture capital. Now, a lot of it's from insider dealing in biotech, but it does help if you're also the biggest funder of medical research in the UK. But leaving their natural advantage aside, and it is, of course, all for charity, so in that case, it must be good. What did they learn? They learned that the successful ones are ones where we've put serious money to work. On average in the US, they put in 5.5 times more money per deal than we do here in the UK. And that extra money goes to accelerate the growth of that company, accelerate it into market. And that time to market is really, really crucial. Your great business idea, your great technology will be also being studied in Helsinki, in Calcutta, in Singapore, in Silicon Valley, wherever the hell it may be. There will be other people out there with exactly the same idea. And unless you can get to market first and preserve your perhaps 6 months at best lead, you'll be competed away. So time to market is absolutely crucial. And so you can see here from these charts, the blue and the black is US. This is time to market, time to exit, time to quotation, IPO, whatever it may be. And the green and the red are the European equivalents. And so it's that 2 or 3 year advantage. It's about, basically, if you haven't got to market in 10 years, by market in this case I mean stock market in 10 years, you will not get there. You cannot be running for 200 months hoping somehow we might get an exit. You are history by then. Your technology is dead. Your business model is out of date. So, speed equals success. Look at these figures. It's twice as successful. That 2-year advantage is absolutely key. So, do not hang about. Do not spend 5 years thinking about your business plan. please don't employ consultants for £1 million ago to do your business plan for you, because by the time they've done it, it's out of date. You've got to get there very quickly. Equally, I was complaining about the vicarage and the fast car. I'm afraid to say the venture capitalists, and indeed their limited partners or the people that provide the funds to the venture capitalists, fall into the same category. I mean, I started out at a British merchant bank called Hambros. 25% of the entire bank's balance sheet was in private equity and venture capital, which is unthought of, unheard of today. The regulators would have a complete hissy fit if, as a bank, you had 25% of your balance sheet in private investments. They'd shut you down in a nanosecond, which is part of my other point. In fact, I had someone from the regulator come to see me to say all these private equity investments should be written off because they are risky. Since I made a 31% per annum compound return, I said, well, they may be risky, but some of them do actually work. Anyway, I mustn't get too ranty about regulators. It's just been a bad morning. Look at some of these fantastic deals. This bank and its various entities did some phenomenal investing, early stage, put 80,000 and then a further 700,000 in 1984 into a funny little technology called Vodafone. Most of you are too young to remember when you couldn't actually get a telephone from the post office, but this was a mobile technology, and guess what? It was quite successful. But the key thing they did was actually get real money to work. £40 million as a second round within 2 years of startup. And that was in the 1980s. You put another naught on the end now. Think about that as second round follow-on finance. So I was starting to learn these lessons really, really early. Now, I could well argue, however, Hambros made a big error. They made a modest 46 times their money in 3 years, as one does, and then sold out. They had 5% of Vodafone. I mean, that's an awful lot of sadness. If you just manage to hang on to that. I think Vodafone's value peaked at around about 120 billion. Anyway, you can all do the sums while I'm going on to the next example, which was Getty Images. Yeah, it's my fault this time. We incubated this company. We did really well. We actually took it onto the NASDAQ. Interesting point. Maybe today we'd go onto the fast track market here in the UK. And we made 6 times our money in 15 months. When I say go to market, we went global within 15 months with Getty Images. And we put up a lot of money to get there. What was rather sad was we sold out on IPO. Bad fund construction, made 6 times our money. And yes, how much is Getty Images worth today? Yeah, okay, so it's not very good news. The LPs want their money back because there's a new investment manager or something. The VC is terrified about his inability to raise the next fund, so he wants to prove that some of the investments he's made have been successful, and the management want their vicarage. So between these 3 problems, we do not run our winners. We run our losers, because you don't want to be nasty to those poor little people, so let's give them another £1 million and see how badly they do with it. And we cut our winners. This is not a good investment philosophy. You should be running your winners and cutting your losers. So there's a little lesson for next time. And that may in some ways lead to disintermediation. So we're seeing much more money coming from kind of clubs, and quite serious clubs as well. And what's great is that some of the people that have really made serious money are actually cycling that money around again and bringing the benefit of their investment advice and business experience to the next thing. And certainly I've been very privileged within Disruptive. We've been able to raise, as I say, 40, 50, 60 million pounds for a particular deal from some very nice friends and family. So that's good news. It's disintermediating the traditional structures here. Bureaucracy, please just avoid it. Just say, guys, look, one thing I learned from Hambros was it's about the people and it's about the business model. And you can get that in a couple of hours. And it's nice to have accountants' reports, and it's nice to have market studies and all the rest of it, but they don't really do you very much good. But they do spend a great deal of time and a great deal of money on those things. You can make your business decision, your investment decision in a few hours. It's about the people. Check them out. Get referencing. Actually, one thing I've learned is get the 70-year-olds who've worked through 3 recessions, Sonny. Get the 70-year-old to test the people. because the people judgments are so difficult. If I get 60% of the people judgments right, I reckon I've done well. And actually, the old farts are quite good at the people judgments. They may not know how to turn a computer on, but they certainly know who's a good manager. So, sum it all up. Get yourself the best VC you can, and be proud that you've had backing from an absolutely top investor. Put in lots of money. Do not be shy in your ambition. I went to market, I said I want £900 million. In part by having that sheer arrogance to say this is the amount of money I want, I got it from people. Back a serial entrepreneur. Don't be frightened to go around again, even if the first time wasn't successful. Show that ambition. Have a credible business plan that takes your business global, that actually becomes a market leader. I define success with our businesses by being investigated by the Monopolies Commission. You want to be the market leader, and yes, even though the Monopolies Commission, or whatever they call themselves these days, might not like it, you do actually get more money from being the monopoly. Be fast, be very, very quick. Because if you're not very quick, someone else somewhere else in the world will be quicker than you. Try and get the bureaucrats out of the way and run the winners. That's my views. Thank you.
Edmund, may I ask you one question?
Please, Jennifer.
Okay. I sat and talked to Mr. Truell before we came and did this event. And one of my favorite things when I talked to you was your advice for startups. So all you startups, I want you to listen, okay? Will you talk to them about what you told me, about one of the things you have with little Johnny and his company, and one of the biggest hang-ups for you as an investor with talking to those startups? Because I think we all should know this is one of the things to watch out for. Remember how you want to throw them in the dungeon?
Mm-hmm. Right, so you have these startups, and it's usually one guy with a bright idea, maybe two. I don't want two-person businesses. I would like you to come to me with a startup that says, right, I'm going to employ 35 people. These are the people I need, and this is why we need so many people, and this is why we need £25 million to start up. Because all too often, there's a guy that just loves fiddling with a bloody screwdriver to make this machine better. Not interested. Get it to market. It doesn't matter. So all too often, it's particularly British, I think, and it's particularly for these university startups, phenomenal technology, but we don't need prototype version 6. If prototype version 2 works, get it to market. And bring some commercial people around you. You know, bring some people with some sales skills, presentation skills. I don't care if they don't know how the technology works. They know what it does for you, and that's what matters. So there's an obsession with what the technology does. Not interested. What does it do for me as a customer? And be that customer focus, have that scale, and have that commerciality.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. That was my favorite question.
So I'm a startup founder.
Yep.
I'm interested to know, how do I find VCs like you, and how do I know you're good?
Right. Put it this way, I'm investing my own money, so that's probably the answer. So ask your VC what fund they're on. If it's on fund 1, you probably don't want them. If they're on fund 7 or 8 or 10 or whatever, then you probably do want them. Because by definition, the market would have winnowed them out before they got to fund 10. What you're looking for them to give you is actually that door opening, that acceleration. And so really talk to some of the other investments that they've made. Ring up the CEO of some other thing, preferably in a similar sort of area to your own. What were they like? Were they nitpicky bureaucrats? Or did they really open doors? Did they really help them with their business model? And those are the sort of key things you're looking for. So it's more than the money. It's the strategic advice, and it's that ability and that passion, actually. Do they love their company? Do they love their investee companies? Are they the best thing that they've ever invested in? And can they help those little companies actually get into some serious people? Because when you're trying to sell to those mega corporates or indeed governments, to have that kind of grey hair and credibility alongside you is enormously helpful.
Any other questions? James. Luciana, go ahead.
Hi there, I'm James Fierro with Pure Exchange. Question is around the kind of investment that VCs make, common stock versus preferred shares. Do you do common stock investments? And if you don't, how do you address or how do you come to terms with the misalignment of interests that result from the existing common shareholders and the preferred shareholders?
I hate the way that the venture capital industry has moved towards so-called liquidation preference. For a start, I prefer my companies not to be liquidated. And secondly, it means that the venture capitalist gets 2-3 times their money before the ordinary shareholder, the common stockholder, actually gets anything at all. That seems egregious to me. It's a total misalignment of interests. So maybe another question for your venture capitalist is, do you actually invest in ordinary shares alongside me? Or are you so obsessed with the downside that you need to make 2 or 3 times your money before in your preferred, convertible, participating, cumulative, and everything else type of preference share before I get anything as an entrepreneur? And if the answer is the latter, then don't go with them. Thank you, sir.
Right, just because I saw your hand first, I'm sorry.
Thanks. I'm an angel investor, so I come after the friends and family money and before you guys. So what I've seen is that I invest in people and products and ideas, and I was ready to have a fight with you, but the last couple of answers you've given have actually made you look at, like a nicer VC, because as you say, the preference shares are the things I hate. But also you talked about the vicarage, and what I've seen is that the VCs come in, they take such a dilution, they drive the share price down. The brilliant guy who I've met years ago or a couple of years ago who's the entrepreneur ends up with a tiny, tiny diluted amount of the company. And he says, even if I've put 10 years of my life into this, I'm going to have a tiny, tiny piece of a reasonably sized company. I didn't put 10 years into this. I'll take my 3 million because they're diluted out. They're owning 5% of the company that they used to own 100% of. I've seen that disincentivize them. And I suppose what you've just said would act as a warning to other companies to say, right, are you going to end up with none of this company? And the preference shares mean that the VCs end up with, some of them, not yourself from the answers you've just given, are obsessed with control and they don't understand the business. And they're just obsessed with answering to the people higher up to them.
Okay, well, I'm worried I'm suddenly appearing nice. The issue with that business founder is that all too often the business founder is obsessed with control. Now, they may have a good idea. They may be a brilliant software engineer, whatever it may be. They're more often than not remotely commercial. Selling is a very, very scary thing. So someone might actually say no, and people don't like it when people say no. So they don't even ask. And therefore, they fiddle with prototype 6 rather than actually getting out there to market. So the problem is, those business founders get diluted out of control, and you have a big fight at some point. All too often, I have a fight with the founder managers of these companies, because you say, look, we need a really good sales guy, we need a really good production person in this business to get it commercialized and get it onto a bigger stage. No, I'm the chief executive. It's like, guys, stop being the chief executive. Be the chief dreams officer or something. And bring in other people and accept, this is the bit that we have the fight about, is bringing in other people so that this technologist, who is not a business manager, can keep doing the technology bit where the business people can come in and actually sell the product, make the product, and do the numbers. And that's my problem with it all too often. So you have a fight, you get dilution, you get sued for transgender discrimination. It's just a nightmare, and it's very unsatisfactory because the guy that founded the company that had the brilliant idea finishes up all bitter and twisted about the fact he's now got 2% of the action. You've wasted we spent 13% of our management budget on employment lawyers last year. I mean, that cannot be good news. And so that's the problem.
Okay, I know we just said one more, but we really have one more back there.
Oh, okay, good.
I think the last few points you've made are really interesting, because isn't there just a fundamental case to parachute in new management at Series A investment, people who are the serial entrepreneurs that you've talked about, have had the experience, who know how to manage and grow businesses, because that's ultimately the focus, is to grow the business. It shouldn't be about the founder. The founder, in a number of cases, in my personal experience, founder realizes that it's in his interest to grow the business, and he might not be the right person to do that. And in fact, those are probably the more sensible businesses to take forward and to grow, because you get the right expertise in.
I absolutely agree with you. Unfortunately, in the EU socialist world we inhabit, that is constructive dismissal, because you are downgrading the chief executive's role, at which point they can, as I say, sue you for a lot of money, because you have undervalued or undermined their role. That's a kind of, I said bureaucracy, it's the type of rubbish that just needs to get out of the way. One final comment for government is, please derogate any business, well, preferably every business, but if you can't do every business because of some EU superstate rule, then could you please at least derogate any business with less than, say, 50 employees from this raft of ridiculous employment legislation? Because you guys have got better things to do than go through 11 stages of consultation when you want to get rid of an underperforming employee. We've got better things to do as a venture capitalist than have a fight about constructive dismissal with the founder. And it's just a nonsense. We can't afford the time, the effort, the money to have large HR departments. Anyway, it's a bit of a sad point to end on, but it's absolutely right. Get the right teams at the outset, and the rest will follow. It's the people at the end of the day. Thank you.